Joining us now, Vanessa Neumann, our expert in South America. She's from Venezuela. She's covered all of these countries and traveled extensively. She's the president of Asymmetrica. Vanessa, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, John. It's always a pleasure.
We've got a caravan coming from Honduras, 1,500 people strong. They want to basically crash the border of the United States, get in. The majority of them normally get in, and then some are arrested, released, but they disappear into the country. The president, not happy about this, President Trump says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. If you don't stop this caravan now, and by the way, they can't come from Honduras to the United States. They have to go through several other countries, as you know, cross their borders to get to ours. So the president says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. If you don't stop them, I'm just going to cut your aid off. Have a good day.
Right.
What should happen here?
No. Oh, well, so it's a complicated issue. But remember when I was on last week and I said the issue with Latin America in general is you remember when Bush said it's the economy stupid? Well, here it's the corruption stupid and the violence, right? Those continue to be the two big issues throughout Latin America. So these guys are fleeing, a country that basically can't provide for them, right? They have poor services, poor security, lots of violence, lots of gangs, mainly because of the drug trafficking. So the drug trafficking routes that go into the U.S. come through Honduras and Guatemala. They're what we call transit points. So those gangs, in order to control those drugs that then go into Mexico and into the U.S., fight over those routes, and that's where the problem is. So the state structure really doesn't work. So, So here's the story. You kind of feel sorry for them, right? They want a better life for their families. I get that. And so they try, and the U.S. is like the promised land. So fine, I get all that. But what has happened is these governments, they've been getting aid from the U.S. They get support militarily, financially, and because the corruption is so great, it's still not achieving the goal it's supposed to achieve. And as we now know, from other immigration crises that we're seeing in the region, Venezuela being the biggest, these countries, when their people leave, it kind of eases the pressure on them. You export the problem, right? So what Trump is trying to do is to say, look, you need to deal with this problem, and you need to build the structure for them to stay. You've got to get your law and order sorted out. You've got to get your economy sorted out. The police need to stop being corrupt so that they do their jobs, so that security improves, and they can stay in their countries. And that's a fair position. That's a fair position by the president to do that.
So what happens, Vanessa, to this caravan now? I mean, they're en route. How is it stopped? How is it disbanded? How is it turned away? What will happen?
Well, I mean, so for a long time, for several years, those of us who work in the security space, we were talking, we were doing analyses of what we call exporting the border. So rather than just worry about the U.S.-Mexico border, it's worry about southern Mexico's border, which, as you rightly said, they need to enter. The goal is to reach the U.S. They have to transit through various different countries to get here. And so that gives you various opportunities to stop them. And ultimately, what you want to do is to work with Mexico to say, look, just don't let them enter Mexico. If they can't enter Mexico, they can't enter the U.S. Mm-hmm. So you want to, that's another reason why you want to sort of have a slightly better relationship with the Mexicans. And you want to incentivize them there are a number of ways to do it. You either encourage them with technology and support on their southern border, or punish them if they let them in and let them transit through. So that's, I think, what the U.S. is looking to do, is to incentivize these countries to stop them before they get as far as the U.S.-Mexico border, and you have various opportunities. So this would be, now that NAFTA, don't call it NAFTA, the new non-NAFTA deal is signed with Mexico, the U.S. should use that as leverage and help Mexico stop them before they enter Mexico. That's just a negotiation.
So if this caravan was going to illegally cross into Mexico and get absorbed into the country, right? They said, okay, Mexico is a better choice than we have. We can't get into the U.S., but we're just coming to Mexico.
Right.
Mexico has very strict immigration laws. This is the amazing thing about this that the legacy media will not tell you. You can't just go to Mexico. It is much more difficult to enter that country legally or illegally than the United States, right? It's much more difficult. Yet they got 1,500 people. What do they do when they get to the Mexican southern border? What do the Mexican authorities do? Say, hey, step right up. No problem. Hey, there's the road. Take that. I mean, and then what if they just wander off and absorb into the countryside? I mean, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Well, some of them, I really can't speak to sort of the immigration policies of Mexico. I'm not well versed in that. So I'm not sure exactly what their rules of entry are and transit. I don't know if they keep saying we're just transiting on to the U.S. and they declare that, if that makes it easier for them to enter. But, you know, from a lot of these poor migrants' point of view, some of them will just stay in Mexico. Mexico has a great deal of violence as well, but it has a decent economy. It will absorb some of them. They're sort of similar people, you know, ethnically. They speak the same language. They don't have the culture shock of entering the U.S., which is, you know, different language, different culture. It's harder to adapt, right, to life in the U.S. You know, Mexico won't have, I mean, they're a big country, so they are able to absorb some people, but I don't see why they would want to. Once again, I think that after years of, you know, we had Operation Martillo, which is, you know, to stamp out the gangs in Central America, particularly Guatemala, Honduras, these countries that we're seeing the migrant trains from. We've been having that for a long time, which are these sort of military and intelligence operations to knock out the gangs and the drug trafficking. And yet we still got the gangs, we still got the drug trafficking, and we've still got the people flows. So, you know, I think they get rid of the problem. The governments say, well, you know, you take care of our people. So I think that Trump is, again, you know, just saying, you've got to fix this. You've got to figure out your problem, your governance, and make the people stay. But I don't know what, I can't imagine that Mexico really needs a whole bunch of more, you know, poor, low sort of, I mean, they don't have no skills. They have
low
some skills, but they're, you know, artisanal skilled workers in their country. I mean, that's competition for them.
Well,
they already have problems.
And then the question becomes, if the Mexicans let them through and they get to, you know, they get to San Diego or they get to the southern border of the United States, then what do we do? You know, we've seen in the past that no matter how many Border Patrol agents, they get through, and then, you know, some of them are sick. I mean, there's all kinds of problems that go on. You have to take care of them. And then there's catch and release. So they catch them and they give them a piece of paper and say, show up in court in 120 days and here's a bus ticket. And that's the end of it. I mean, the whole thing is, I mean, it is theater of the absurd what is going down on the southern border right now with this caravan. And it's going to be interesting to see what the Trump administration and Jeff Sessions does. But they have to do something, because what I agree with the president on, you let these 1,500 in, tomorrow it'll be 15,000. And after that, it'll be 150,000. I mean, you're never going to stop it until you stop it, right?
Well, right, yeah. I mean, word does spread of what's a hospitable environment. Migrants do then, you know, phone home and say, hey, I got through. You should come through as well. You know, and this is how you do it. Call so-and-so. He'll organize the next caravan. So, and we know that just historically from any migrant flow. You also see migrant flows from, you know, the Europeans are upset because they get it from the Middle East and North Africa, right, across the Mediterranean. And once you start getting like what we call like a seed population, right, a group of people who make it through and, you know, have legitimate claims, there's wars and everything else, or terrorism, then they bring their cousins and they bring their families, and then they form communities in their new countries. I mean, it's just reality. That's just how, that is the dynamic of immigration. So yeah, if you get these through, there will be there will be more, because they will phone home and give instructions on, this is what worked for me, come and join us. I mean, you would too, you would phone your cousin and say, this worked, life is better here, come join me. So I'm sympathetic on the personal level, but as I keep saying, these countries need to step up, stop just taking money and security from the U.S., and sort themselves out.
Well,
and stop foisting the problem onto other countries.
There's 4 billion people around the globe that would rather be in the United States than wherever they are now. So, I mean, the fact is, you either have a country or you don't. But to say, well, they want to come in because there's a better opportunity, let's let them in. Well, there's 4 billion other people that want to come in. So You can't have another 4 billion people here in the United States. You would not have a country. So that's really what the issue is. Vanessa Neumann, we're out of time. Asymmetrica, what's your website, Vanessa?
www.asymmetrica.net, N-E-T.